you do see the yellow area in front of you, which is the state of Israel, and you see the two arrows pointing at this area, which is the West Bank of today. By the way, I'm not using the term West Bank usually. I will use the biblical term Judea and Samaria. The West Bank that many people say the Jews have no rights in is the heartland of biblical Israel. Everything you read about in the Old Testament about the monarchy and the prophets and Abraham and our patriarchs and all the others took place in the land of Judea and Samaria, which is called recently, politically, the West Bank. The West Bank of what, by the way? The West Bank of the River Jordan. Guess what? The Jordan has an East Bank as well. It's a river. The East Bank is not discussed. Everybody speaks about west to the Jordan River. This will be the area. That area was allocated to the Palestinian homeland. That was supposed to be the other state that was supposed to be born in the area. On the lower left-hand side, the area of Gaza, that was also allocated for the Palestinians to be their country after the British mandate terminates. What happened was that when the Arab armies came seemingly to help the Palestinians in the war against Israel, the king of Jordan, Abdullah, deployed his troops in this area which was supposed to be Palestinian. And after the war was over, instead of pulling out from the land and give it over to the Palestinians, congratulating them for the new state, he simply stayed. And therefore, the West Bank, that was supposed to be the bigger chunk of the Palestinian state, was never born. The land was taken, stolen, robbed, you name it, by the king of Jordan. The same thing happened with the Gaza area. This was supposed to be part of Palestine. The Egyptian army, after invading Israel's territory, that was defeated. And as they pulled out from Israel, they decided to occupy that area, and instead of giving it to the Palestinians to say, this is another piece of land for you to be independent, they simply stayed in the Gaza area. Palestine was never born, not because of Israel. Most of the land allocated to the Palestinian state by the UN in 1947 was now in Arab hands, not in Jewish hands. If the king of Jordan pulled out and would tell the Palestinians, here is your land, there would be a Palestinian state since 1948. Maybe the conflict was on a totally different level. If the president of Egypt back then would say, we are pulling out from your land and you can have it to build your country, there would be a Palestine today. The Palestinian state wasn't born, not because of Israel. Because of the king of Jordan, because of Egypt, they kept that land in their hands, and therefore the two-state solution, everybody says a two-state solution, it was proposed already in 1947. That was the two-state solution that one party rejected, which led to a war, which led to the invasion of the Arab countries to take the Palestinian land, officially annex it. Palestine was never born. So that's how the war ended in 1948. Nobody speaks about Palestinians yet. There was no such an entity, because keep in mind, if you call this place Palestine and now it's in Jordanian hands, you're conflicting with Jordan. And Arab solidarity is very important. If you dare to call this Palestinian land, you make Jordan your enemy. Nobody was mentioning the term. If you dare to speak about your national right as a Palestinian while you're occupied by Jordan, in most cases, that will end a second later with a bullet in your head. You try to speak about Palestinian nationality in Cairo, you won't live for too long. Please understand, you can wave the banners of Hamas and Hezbollah in Washington, D.C. Try to do that in an Arab country. See how long will you live, all right? And I'm not exaggerating. And therefore, we speak about Palestinians that had the chance to become a nation. This was totally crushed by the Arab nations. There is no Palestine. A new chapter in the area. The state of Israel exists, and for 19 years, 48 to 67, the West Bank is in Jordanian hands, and then we have the Gaza Strip in the hands of the Egyptians, and there is no Palestine, and that will lead us to the Sixth Day War in just a minute. So, what is Palestine? Where is Palestine? Well, it depends who you're asking. Amazing, huh? Look at what Yasser Arafat himself said not that long ago, okay? Palestine is Jordan. Because when the British divided artificially mandatory Palestine, it was the same people who lived on both sides of the Jordan River. And therefore, Jordan should be the Palestine. It's not my opinion. It was Arafat's opinion. It was the king of Jordan's opinion. It was prominent Arab leaders that said, just a minute now, Jordan should be Palestine, because Jordan occupies a land that was allocated to the Palestinians. There will be a war between the PLO and the Jordanian army. September 1970, Black September, it was called a civil war. Palestinians, Jordanians, a civil war, indicates the fact that we speak about the same people and they have a country already. That's Jordan. Don't listen to me, listen to their statements. So even in 1948, until 1967, nobody spoke about an independent people called Palestine. It was supposed to be part of the Jordanian kingdom, land and people. Some other ideas about the Palestinian nationality, or how the Arabs seeing the existence of the Arabs. Many of them believe that Arab should be one nation, not divided to smaller nations, because it weakens their strength, it weakens their purpose. They should be united, no borders, no nationalities. To speak about a Jordanian national defeats the purpose of Islam. Islam does not believe in nationalities, with one exception, lo and behold, Palestinians suddenly, but it wasn't even born yet. So who are the Palestinians? Where is Palestine? Well, depends who you're asking. Depends in what time in history and what are the circumstances and what is your agenda. Today it's very clear, Palestinians. But when you ask people what exactly it means, you don't have an answer, they don't have an answer. If your grandfather came from Egypt as an illegal worker and stayed in Haifa for 2 years and went back home to get his refugee card, that makes you a Palestinian. Technically, you have no idea how to define yourself, because there is no and was no such a definition. Let me make it loud and clear. If 5 million people call themselves a nation, Palestinians, who am I to say that they are not? It's not my choice. That's how they call themselves. And the more we ignore them, it's making things worse. So I'm willing to admit today that there's people called Palestinians. Let's try to find a solution here. But it's a dead end. It's not going anywhere. And not because of Israel. Until 1988, nobody in the Arab world was willing to admit there are people called Palestinians and they have a right to a land. Because until 1988, the whole Arab world believed that the West Bank is Jordanian territory and not Palestinian. In 1988, the king of Jordan said, well, I'm sorry. This land that my grandfather annexed illegally from the Palestinians was a big mistake. I'm relinquishing any demand for the West Bank. Well, hallelujah. Now we know that somebody else is supposed to hold the West Bank and maybe have a nation over there, not before 1988. And I bet you thought that this issue is on the table for the last 500 years at least. No, it's a new issue. Israeli-Arab conflict, that's older. But to speak about Palestinians, so there's much confusion about who these people are, where they came from, how they identify themselves. There's a kind of a funny story. There was the Miss Universe beauty pageant competition every year. You know who is going to represent Palestine for the first time ever? A very beautiful young girl who was born in America. Her father is Egyptian. Her mother is Italian. She lives in Dubai. And she will represent Palestine. Isn't that confusing? So who is a Palestinian? Good question. Nobody has a clear answer. Because if you lived in Beirut, you're Lebanese, and next to you, UNRWA opened a nice refugee camp, and you got to get some food and you ask for a card, you just adopted a new identity. You're a Palestinian because somebody gave you a plastic card because there's more food in the camp than around the neighborhood. So go figure how to identify many of the members, and it's their confusion as well. They'll be honest enough to say when you have a conversation, and we're neighbors, we live in Israel, Israeli Arabs will call themselves also Palestinians. They want to identify with the station, they're Israelis. And they will tell you, it's kind of a tool that we use politically. We don't really know what's the identity, but it's not important. There is an issue we need to deal with. Ignoring that is not going to help us anyhow. But the confusion is genuine. Who are these people? Who represent them? Yasser Arafat. You all heard the name, right? Egyptian. Born in Egypt, never been to Palestine until we brought him back home, and so forth and so forth. So we do speak about this confusion, how the Arab Muslims saw Palestinian, who is a Palestinian, and once again I showed you this quote earlier as well. How do you create a nation to people that do not understand the whole idea behind nationality? And look at this one. Here is a Palestinian prominent leader admitting who are the Palestinians. Okay, that's not me. That's not Israeli sources. That's not the Jewish propaganda. 1977. Okay, so you do understand part of this confusion. So there is no Palestinian state, there is a Jewish one, the state of Israel, and few things happen. Meanwhile, between the two wars, the Palestinian refugees are treated very poorly by the host countries. Speaking about apartheid, a Palestinian in Lebanon cannot leave the refugee camp, he cannot find a decent job, there was zero education, 90% unemployment. All right, that's apartheid. You won't find it in Israel, you find it in Lebanon, you find it in Egypt, in Kuwait, in Iraq, in Syria, except for Jordan. Jordan was the only country that gave them citizenship, and the Palestinians in Jordan are citizens of the Kingdom of Jordan. They can be elected to the parliament, they cannot hold any real positions in the economy, for example. That's apartheid. In Israel, once again, people bring accusations against us. The easiest one to debunk or to refute is just come and see. Israeli Arabs are Israelis. They don't go to the army, that's the only exception, they can volunteer. But you find them in every aspect of life, in politics, in the judiciary, they are part of the state of Israel. The only Arabs in the Middle East that are free and equal in the eyes of the law are the Israeli Arabs. Not the Egyptians and not the Iraqis and not all the other. Israelis. You know how annoying that is for them? You know how they hate to admit. You know how many Palestinians tried to get Israelis' IDs? And there was a way to do that. Just to be part of the Jewish state, the dhimmi state that Islam despises. You understand the problem and the conflict that they have. With just daily issues. All right, we do speak about critical time because meanwhile the Jordanians and the Egyptians basically are training in refugee camps, those Palestinian refugees, and they make small kind of terrorist squads out of them, send them across the border to try to attack as many Israelis, to try to rob and to steal. We lost hundreds of people. Country is still young. The borders are not well fortified yet. It's easy to cross from side to side. So we speak about years of tension until the country got together to protect ourselves and the people, but that will take few years. Meanwhile, in Cairo, a student by the name of Yasser Arafat is founding a group of Palestinians. He had to flee to Kuwait because the Egyptians will show zero tolerance to Palestinians in Egypt, zero. So he flees to Kuwait, a little more liberal, and they organize the first group of people, youngsters that speak about the Palestinian nation. They are Palestinians. They want the world to recognize them. They don't get recognition in the Arab countries, not for many years to come. But around the world, around them, they begin to get this recognition. That will be the beginning of the Palestinian national identity. And they have a big dilemma. The world is praising the Jewish state, so small, so powerful. How can we get the world's attention? Let me tell you how. If you're engaged in terror, you'll get the world's attention. It won't be through peaceful negotiations. It won't be writing articles to try to draw the world's attention. But if you hijack an airplane to Jordan and you blow it up to pieces after killing, evacuating the people, you get the world's attention. If you attack the Israeli Olympic team in Munich 1972 and murder them, you get the world's attention. So from the very beginning, the birth of a national movement had to be engaged in terror if you want the world's attention. That was their mindset, and they were right. I hate to admit, terror wins. Not always, but it does. Unless you take some real measures to stop it. Look what happens around the world. Terror wins. Nations don't know how to respond to terror. It takes time. You know how you defeat terror? By becoming one. We don't want to be a terrorist entity. America doesn't want to. You don't understand the problem. How do you fight effectively against a group that respects absolutely nothing that you hold to be important? How do you do that? You become like them. But that's the end of democracy. So the whole Western world is struggling how to defeat terror. There's only one entity fighting terror, and quite well. Who would that be? Israel in Gaza, thank you, for the last 2 years, and not for the first time. The world gives us advisors. Well, show some leadership. Tell us what to do. All those bright politicians that want to tell us how to fight our wars. We don't have to do that, just leave us alone. And we do that in behalf of the whole free world. All right? So people speak, but the only country that does something is the state of Israel. All the others are just talking, unfortunately. So Arafat will be the one that founded a group called Fatah. And then in 1964 in East Jerusalem, Jerusalem is a divided city. East Jerusalem is in Jordan. They found the head organization, the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. They operate in Jordan. They don't operate in Egypt, but Jordan gives us a kind of custody. But watch us very carefully how loud you want to be and how radical you want to be, but they exist. So the Palestinians have now leadership. It wasn't elected. Nobody voted for them. It was appointed by the King of Jordan to represent the Palestinians in the Jordanian parliament, and later on as the people for itself. 1967, another turning point. Another war around the corner. We go from war to war, I'm sorry. And this one will be called the 67 War, the Six-Day War. June of 1967, President Nasser from Egypt is leading the Arab world. Quite a very kind of charismatic, good-looking young man. And his philosophy was, listen, ever since the First World War, Islam had failed us. We were Muslims, and we thought that as Muslims, we can win, but we lost. Let's focus on the Arab civilization more than we focus on Islam. Let's create a pan-Arab movement that will include all the Arabs, Muslims and Christians alike. There are Christian Arabs. And we'll focus on our civilization, on our nationality. Because Islam had failed us and we lost to the Christians, maybe under this new title, we'll win. And everybody joins in. Nasser will be the most prominent Arab leader, not Muslim, but Arab, to create a movement called Pan-Arabism. I'm sure that you don't know that, but Egypt and Syria were united to be one country, 3 years only, 1958 to 1961, part of the Pan-Arabism. Against who? Against Israel. As Muslims, we had failed. Let's try the other aspect, the secular one, the Arab one. And also, since Egypt was humiliated in 1948 as well, he says, listen, Israel is vulnerable. There is right here in the southern part of the Red Sea, all right, this Red Sea, that's a place that has 2 small islands in Egyptian hands, and that controls all the naval traffic that goes to the Israel southern port. If you stop the Israel ships, or ships trading with Israel, basically you're going to strangle the country because most of our economy is dependent back then, all right, in the trade with Africa and Asia. Let's officially close the Straits of Tiran, and that will be basically a proclamation of war. Same thing with the Suez Canal. 18% of the world trade goes through the canal today. By the way, no, because way down here, that's where the Houthis in Yemen are controlling the entrance to the Red Sea. And you started paying much more money for all your commodities because of that. Because cargo ships today have to sail around the whole continent of Africa, which takes many weeks more. The whole chain of supply around the world slow down because the Houthis are threatening the southern entrance. And the world is okay with that. Egypt is devastated because 50% of its revenue is taxes of ships using the canal. Not anymore, because the militia in Yemen is firing on everything that moves in this area. And the world tolerates it. And they're not fighting for Yemen. They are Muslims. And they are Shiites. Last night, half of my country had to go to the bomb shelters because the Houthis fired another ballistic missile from Yemen into Israel. Usually, it doesn't hit the ground, we intercept it, but it's always there. You do know that maybe you'll have to wake up and go to the bomb shelter, etc. It's daily life. Nobody should get used to that. Unfortunately, we're used to that, which is horrible. To even think that somebody had to get used to live in such conditions. Every now and Yemen, they're not Palestinians, they are Muslims. So I try to convince you, the issue is not Israeli-Palestinian. The issue is Jewish Muslim, Christian Muslim. You're in it as well. And you're the big Satan. We are the little one. If you listen to the way that they divide the world about the big Satan and the little Satan, so we are in a better position, so to speak. Sinai is occupied at this moment by United Nations peacekeeping forces, and Nasser is ordering them to leave the area. The Egyptian army enters Sinai, deploys right on our borders, and then, and again, we are speaking of 1967, I was alive by then, many of you remember that maybe as first-handed news all around the world, and here we listen to those inflammable speeches of Arab leaders once again, and not around, we are going to destroy, we are going to kill, we are going to push into the ocean, the Jewish state, all the same rhetoric that we are so accustomed to from 1947, 48, same thing. Times of trouble in Israel, as you understand. I was only 10 years old at the time, still very vividly remember. All right, the tension in the country, people spoke about the destruction of the state of Israel. Only 20 years after the Holocaust, there will be another Holocaust. That was the way of thinking in Israel. Well, since we knew that they mean business, we did not wait for them to first move. We launched a preemptive airstrike, one of the most brilliant campaigns in military history ever. In 6 days, the Arab armies were devastated. Israel was able not just to protect itself. I love that. Israel has the right to protect itself. Thank you. A mouse has the right to protect himself, okay? Protecting ourselves. We also conquered a lot of land. And within 6 days of a campaign, here is the new state of Israel. 3 times bigger in size, conquering the Sinai from the Egyptians, the West Bank from Jordan, Golan Heights from Syria, a new state, a new chapter in our lives. I do want to show you a short video, which is, again, very touching. I don't need the volume. I'll tell you exactly what's being said. All right. Israeli paratroopers deployed on Mount of Olives, looking at Old Jerusalem in Jordanian hands, the Temple Mount, giving the order to charge the city and conquer Jerusalem coming from the east. You can have a little bit of video just to, or audio if I may, just to hear some of the noises. Some of you remember Lions Gate because you've been there. That was the main point to break through the old city from Lions Gate. The 55th Airborne Brigade, paratroopers, reservists by the way, will meet on top of Temple Mount, says Colonel Motagur, the commander. That's Temple Mount. On top of Temple Mount, excitement was mounting, obviously. And the Western Wall, Jews could not reach because it was in the Jordanian part of town, so there was no access to that. The commentator says, I'm walking downstairs to the Western Wall. I was never a religious man, but to see the Western Wall is a dream of many generations. The Western Wall, June 7th, 1967, around 2 p.m. We have a chief army rabbi, so this is the chief army rabbi as well. An amazing victory. Jerusalem was reunited, and I can tell you, although they will not, that Israel's victory was the best thing that ever happened to the Palestinians. Back then at the time they did not know that, and even today they will not admit that, but please listen to me when I say that. Because we gave the Palestinians a chance to be a nation once again. We freed them from the oppression of their Jordanian brothers and Egyptian brothers in Gaza. Now the Palestinians that were taken captives by the brothers in 1948 live under Israel's, let's say, occupation. Israel is a democracy. You want to speak about your legitimate national rights? Go ahead, that's how the system works. We won't kill you for saying that. So 19 years after the Palestinian dream to have a state was crushed by the Arabs, now there's a chance. Because in Israel, we can speak about our national rights. We know the Jewish democracy. We know that they are fair, they are flexible. We need to bring up the issue, and maybe we'll have our state, something that the Arab brothers and sisters will never give us. So 1967 was a turning point that we missed. In Israel, the mindset simply did not understand that these people will try again to be a nation. They do have a national aspiration, and that's what they want to be. But 1967 was indeed a turning point. For the Palestinians, once again, they have a chance to be a nation. Few things followed the war, and as always, I have to skip some. Few days after the war was over, the 19th of June, Israeli Prime Minister Levi Eshkol makes a proposition from the Knesset, the parliament. Israel, he says, is willing to pull out from all the land that we conquered, from the Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Syrians, and give it back to these countries for peace. Never in the future, Israel will be so generous. By the way, Palestinians are not mentioned. We did not take any land from Palestinians. What we conquered from Jordan was indeed Palestinian, but was stolen by the Jordanians. We did not take it from Palestinians. It was taken from a sovereign country, the Jordanian. The answer was September 1st in Khartoum, Sudan. You see the answer. So even if you wanted to negotiate land for peace, and keep in mind that Palestinians are not even mentioned in that proposition. They don't exist, not in the Arab countries and not in Israel. It was speaking about nations who are going to pull out for peace. It was not even a starter. So what else can we offer except for committing suicide, which we're not going to do? That was our maximum. If that doesn't meet your minimum, what else can we talk about except the one thing that you want, an utter destruction of the Jewish state? That's not going to happen. The United Nations, as always, gets involved. They think they do the right thing, but not always. And they pass a resolution from November 67, and they speak about the rights of all the countries in the area. Is there a country called Palestine? No. So what countries are we talking about? It does speak about territories, not the territories, territories. Israel said, okay, we're going to pull out from some territories, but not from the territories. It doesn't say the territories. It's important. Every UN document that's published is published in 7 different languages. And you know, translations can be tricky. The French version says from the territories. The English one says from territories. And we said, hey, we'll go with the English one. The Arab one goes with the French one. You understand? It just said T-H-E. That makes all the difference in the world. The territories, everything you conquered in 1967 are the territories. It doesn't say that. It says territories. And keep in mind, the Palestinians are not mentioned there. Okay, we still speak about issue between countries. That's 1967. Nobody even mentions the term Palestine or Palestinians. And you thought that we have the issue for centuries upon centuries, not even back in 1967. Let's speak about the legal status of the land. I did mention earlier about this utia possidetis iure, but it doesn't really matter. When you speak about occupied territories, and that's the term the world embraced, occupied territories. Occupation has a very simple meaning. If a sovereign country is conquering land from another sovereign country, that would be occupied territories. We conquered the West Bank, I would say liberated, okay? Conquered it from the Jordanians. But it wasn't theirs to begin with. The West Bank was occupied by Jordan from the Palestinians that refused to take the UN resolution. Confused? Of course you are. Everybody is. So it's not really occupied territories. So how do we call it? Liberated territories? That would be the term I would use. This is the land of my ancestors. God promised this land to me. And I'm back after all these years because God keeps his promises to his people. And therefore, maybe the only way to describe it will be disputed territories. It's not very clear, all right? Can we live with that? Disputed territories? By the way, I checked, I did a study about it. Nobody called the territories occupied before 1967. It was occupied by Jordan, occupied by Egypt, by every legal terminology. Not even once they were called occupied territories. Since when they're called occupied? So the Jewish state has them. That's the way in the UN, in the media, in the academia. It's amazing. It's a fact. Please go and check, all right? The term occupied territories, 1967, not prior to that. And since we conquered the West Bank, some Palestinians fled to Jordan, including Mr. Arafat that joined them from Kuwait. And they created almost like a state within a state. It was Palestinians going to the Palestinian country of Jordan. They became so strong and so arrogant that it led to a civil war in Jordan. The king of Jordan, Hussein, almost lost his kingdom. And we understand that he has to take action. With Israel's help, I have to say, he sent his army into the Palestinian camps, butchered about 20,000 of them in a brutal civil war. And the Palestinians had to leave Jordan, but you want to stay on the borders of Israel to carry on the struggle. They chose Lebanon to be the new destination. And Lebanon was basically a country which has a very weak central government, right on Israel's borders. Very easy to create another state within a state. That will be the new choice of the Palestinians. So since 1970, September, Black September, will become a very militant terror group as well. They will carry out the attack on the Olympic Games in Munich. So it's commemorating the disaster of the Palestinians, butchered by the Jordanian army, and had to go to Lebanon in order to start all over again. Well, again, I'm going to, you know what? Okay. Sometimes I hesitate to show that, but again, speaking about the contribution, all right, to the world, that's the contribution of our dear friends. Nobody else did it before. I keep telling people, listen, you are paying a fortune, we are paying a fortune to air travel, and security is absolutely crazy in places, and there was a reason why. All right, so millions of people around the world are basically making a living thanks to that. Airport security, we could have spent the money in a much better way. Okay, and this is not propaganda, not being biased. These are facts, the contribution of Palestinian terrorism. Well, meanwhile, in South Lebanon, they are there, and they are the new headquarters of the Palestinians. Arafat, of course, is the leader. Many people join in from all around the world. Lebanon is not strong enough to stop them from acting, and that's what they plan. All the terror attacks around the world, including hijacking airplanes and the Olympic Games and buses that blow up in places, they have to get the world's attention. The world is praising Israel, a small country, victorious. How can we place our problem on the world's table? Only one way to do that, and that's by introducing international terror. And it works. It works to such an extent that Arafat is invited to address the United Nations General Assembly. The first time ever that a declared terrorist by some countries is officially invited by the UN to address the General Assembly. By the way, he carries the gun in a holster, and they refuse to let him in with a gun. He refuses to go in because he's positive that he's going to be assassinated by Arab leaders in the hall. And they have to negotiate about special security for Mr. Arafat to address the UN in the General Assembly. And what was the message like? Kill the Jews, the land is ours. And the world, as it will happen today and tomorrow, the United Nations is in session, leaders are coming, and I bet you that will be the message, and the whole hall will stand up and will clap. All right? You hear some frustration in my voice once again because it happened in the past, it will happen again. So this will be now the new PLO territory, will be right here on Israel's borders. As they took possession of it, Lebanon could not really stop them. The terror attack started immediately. We speak about Katyusha rockets fired into Israeli communities. We speak about crossing the border, hijacking buses of children with them. We speak about hundreds of Israelis being murdered, all right, by daily infiltration of Palestinian terrorists from Lebanon into Israel until we had to somehow retaliate, and we did. So just a list of those places. And meanwhile, it became to be an international venture. Some of you remember names like the IRA, the Red Japanese Army, the Bader-Meinhof Brigades, the Red Italian Brigades. Rings a bell, maybe? We speak about the main terror groups of the 70s. The PLO is one of them, and all of them get together. There was one enemy. In a big name, the West. More focused, Israel. We had an attack in our airport in Ben Gurion. There was no security in the 70s. There was no need for security. A Japanese terrorist, Kozo Okamoto, Red Japanese Army hired by the PLO, landed at the airport. Nobody checked him getting on the plane. There was no need. Opened the briefcase, takes out an AK-47, sprays the terminal with fire, killing. That's how it started. Wasn't that long ago, remember? Wasn't that long? Most of you are alive in this area. How short is our memory? We just pretend that we don't remember. That's how it started. And then Mr. Arafat is in the United Nations. Another shameful moment, if you ask me, for the UN, because a year later, the United Nations made a proclamation. Zionism equals racism. And the whole house was, until about 20 years ago, they canceled that. But for 30 years, that was official doctrine. That Zionism, it simply speaks about the right of the Jews to have an independent state, equals racism, and so forth and so forth. So the PLO is in Lebanon, and for a few years, in 1982, after the Israeli ambassador in London was not assassinated, was an assassination attempt, he survived, and the operation came from Lebanon, we moved in. We moved in this time to destroy the infrastructure of the PLO. Mission was accomplished after a few months. We called it the First Lebanese War, and that was quite a big success that was followed by a political failure. Israel is experts in winning in the battlefield and then mess everything up politically. Happens over and over again. Our politicians are not that great, as you understand. But the bottom line was that we want to throw out the PLO from Lebanon, and after besieging Beirut, the big moment arrived, and Mr. Arafat was exiled to Tunisia. Let me show you this one. Nope. Nothing happened? How come?
If this was a sad day for Yasser Arafat, he wasn't going to let it show. Before he went to say his farewells to his most valued friends, and the people of West Beirut came to say goodbye to him. The first call was on Walid Jumblat, the leader of the left-wing Muslims in Beirut who've supported him since he brought the PLO headquarters to the city in 1970. Mr. Arafat declared that the siege of Beirut had brought about a new dawn on the Arab scene and in united resistance against the Israelis. There was another enthusiastic reception at the office of the Lebanese Prime Minister, Shafiq al-Wazan, who played a key part in the ceasefire and evacuation negotiations. At the port, the PLO had prepared a guard of honor and short ceremony to see their chairman off. Some more.
How about now? Yes. Well, the PLO is no longer in South Lebanon. The place will be taken by Hezbollah, another name that you may know. And that was after the revolution in Iran, and the Iranians looking to export the revolution. And Lebanon has a lot of Shiites, and Iran is Shiite. So today we have other neighbors on our northern border. By the way, they really were severely hit, all right, by us about a year ago. Some of you follow the news, you do know that not much was left of Beirut and the leadership of Hezbollah. There's never a dull moment, and there's no vacuum. Once you get rid of one, somebody else will take the place, unless you're vigilant, you're prepared, and you know what to do, and we keep failing time after time. Meanwhile, in the territories, since the Palestinian leadership is introducing a lot of terror against Israel, the locals in the territories also want their voice to be heard, and it's very easy. Many of the Palestinians come to work in Israel. Israel issues 120,000 working permits to Palestinians to come and work in Israel. In the Palestinian territories, even today, unemployment more than 60%. And these people come to make Israeli money. That's worth 10 times more than the Palestinian areas. All right, so the two societies are kind of interwoven. They come to work, Israelis go to Gaza to buy groceries, just to see the place. Open borders, it looked like it's okay, but when the Palestinians are so active outside the borders, the local Palestinians have also to show their presence. There was a lot of pressure. We are working outside the borders, you should work inside the border. We have to have the pressure coming from both directions. The first intifada breaks out. Intifada means basically uprising. And when you see those useful idiots marching with globalize the intifada, that's world anarchy. By the way, that's what they are supporting. I'm not sure that they even understand that. So now we have to deal with an issue among the local Arabs. 1967 to 1987, things were relatively quiet. It wasn't totally quiet. We had acts of terror. Israel responded sometimes aggressively, but it was not a national movement over there that goes to war against Israel. It was like crime rate in a certain area. We don't have to be too alert. We deal with it. It will be okay. And we made a mistake. We failed to understand there is a popular national resistance that we need to pay attention to and maybe address it as more than just few individuals who are upset with Israel's occupation. 87, First Intifada was a wake-up call. So we understand now that we have to deal with an issue, which is not just local gangs and militias. We need to think about those people as people and try to find a solution if possible. So the first Intifada was some kind of a wake-up call. Meanwhile, a few things happened. In 1979, Israel and Egypt are making peace. And when the Egyptians are willing to go into the Sinai that we are evacuating, we made them an offer. Take Gaza with you. It was yours until 1967. We are putting out from Sinai, give it back to you, Egypt, take Gaza with you. The president of Egypt very cleverly said, oh no, we don't want Gaza back. Gaza is a hornet's nest, you stick with Gaza, we are not taking Gaza back. So Egypt is out, Israel is out of the area, and Gaza remains like an enclave that Egypt doesn't want to take with them, very clever by the way. In 1988, Hussein, the king of Jordan, said the West Bank was never really mine, anybody can have it. Now there is some clarity. What is the land that we can negotiate about? Who will have that land? And who are the people that live on that land? And only then, for the first time, people speak about Palestinians, about a nation, maybe a Palestinian state. In the land that was offered to them in 1947, was taken by the Egyptians and the Jordanians, that now they relinquish any demands, anybody can have it, it will be a breakthrough. Because now at least we are clear about what is the land that may become a Palestinian state, and who are the people who live there. Well, let's see if there was a room for negotiation. Meanwhile, in 1987, the Muslim Brotherhood is opening a branch in Gaza. It will be called Hamas. Hamas, by definition, is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. I will encourage you to read the book of the founder. All right, his name was Muhammad al-Banna, 1932. It's Hitler's Mein Kampf in Arabic. The same ideas, all right? Muslim Brotherhood. He doesn't speak about the state of Israel. There is no state of Israel in 1932. He speaks about global jihad to massacre the Jews wherever you find them. That's the Muslim Brotherhood. So now, since you live in Israel and you have the right to found an organization, as long as it's not proven to be a terror one, they are successful. They operate, the work Israel is watching, but there's no reason yet to try to somehow fight them, because what they do is education. Very cleverly, by the way. They go into every mosque, into schools. They are building schools, attracting the kids to go to them, to be brainwashed by Hamas's ideology. That's what we see in Gaza. That's how it started. So Hamas is not a key player yet, but is there. And listen to the ambitions of Hamas. If you thought that this is just a local problem and a local issue. All right? That's Hamas. When they speak about Rome, they speak about Catholicism. They speak about the Christian world. They speak about the papacy, all right? So that would be their dream. And this is not just by a nobody. We speak about the Muslim authority. That's what Hamas wants to accomplish. You read the charter of Hamas. Very seldom it mentions Palestinians. It speaks about Muslims and world jihad. The PLO does speak about Palestinians, not Hamas. Hamas speaks about the world jihad, and geographically, we are the first target to take out. So we are the first one that they can collide with. That will be a new player in the neighborhood, so to speak. Ahmed Yassin was the founder of the movement with Israel's help. I know it sounds amazing, all right? It presented itself as a group that will dedicate itself to social issues and education. Why not? So we totally were fooled by what is the real objective of Hamas. We had a wake-up call. All right, and not just 2023, long before that. So just so that you would know who are the people that we are talking about, that will be Hamas. That's their ambition. We'll meet them in the next session that will be dedicated to the war in Gaza in some more details. All right, so that will be our friendly neighbor on the other side of the fence. And since now we have some clarity about the land and about the people, Israel had elections in 1992. Yitzhak Rabin was elected as prime minister, and some secret talks start in the Norwegian capital, Oslo. Israeli representatives meet with Palestinian representatives, and they start questioning the possibility of some kind of an agreement. An autonomy for the Palestinians. Nobody speaks about a state. All right, that was the beginning of it. And it surfaced when the discussions and the talks moved to Washington, D.C. Clinton is the president. It produced an agreement. It was called the Declaration of Principles, and it says very clearly, Israel recognizes the PLO as the leaders of the Palestinians. By the way, they were never elected. The PLO was never elected by anybody. Israel recognized their leadership, basically. The PLO recognized the state of Israel, but not as a Jewish state. That will never happen, by the way. I'm telling you, they want us to recognize the future Palestine as a Palestinian state. They will never, ever recognize Israel as a Jewish state. They can't. It's just another state. It has Jews in it, and Arabs and Buddhists. An Arab leader, a Muslim leader, we made peace with Egypt. Egypt did not recognize Israel as a homeland for the Jewish people, as the state of Israel, without a word about its Jewish nature. Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Autonomy, said many times, in a future Palestine, Jews will not be permitted to live. Just a minute now. In our country, close to 2 million of your people live. Equal citizenship, what do you mean? Isn't that the most racist comment you ever made? The world was okay with that. By the way, by law, there are only 2 countries in the world that a Jew cannot hold citizenship, just 2. Jordan and Saudi Arabia. That's it. What's so special about them? Oh, that's the very heart of Islam. That's where Islam was forged. Mecca, Medina. You cannot be a citizen of Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and be Jewish. Isn't that racist, to say the least? But who cares? Who cares? So now we have some negotiations. And after everything was cleared, the leaders are exchanging letters, and Yitzhak Rabin sends a letter to receive from Yasser Arafat that the PLO recognizes Israel's right to exist, etc. And Mr. Rabin also answers with a letter, not that important. But after they cleared the road for some negotiations and agreement, they had to address the people. There was a lot of resistance to that agreement in Israel as well. To be honest with you, most Israelis did not like to see those negotiations back in the day. We don't give up, it's our country, etc. Same from the other side. So the nations were addressed by the leaders. That was Rabin's message. All right? A man that I have to say, of much integrity, good prime minister, although it's debatable, not everybody liked him, but that will be the message. When Arafat addressed his people, that was the message. Now the thing is that everything was published, everything is in the language that we can understand, but you always think, well, it doesn't really mean that. Here's an opposition, and he has to talk to them as well. We are partners, we just shook hands, it will have to work. It looked like a dawn of a new era. The state of Israel and the Palestinians finally got some sense in the brains. They are going to work a peace plan because it's good for everybody, right? Wrong. I have to say, and this will be the little part of my whole presentation, will be a little bias. We came to this agreement with clean hands and pure hearts. We meant what we signed, not the Palestinians. So the minute we started implementing the whole agreement, instead of peace on the other side, we got more terror. But now we said, we are partners. It's just the beginning of it. People understand the benefits. It has to work. It wasn't the plan. It wasn't the plan for the Palestinian side. They call it the salami system. We'll take whatever we can get. We're not going to recognize. We're going to accomplish our goal. No Jewish state. And this is before the Muslim agenda kicked in. It's still the national one and not the religious one. But back then, I'm telling you, everybody, well, in my country, was quite an optimist. So this has to work. Question is why the two people went to this agreement from the Israeli side. Once again, we thought that maybe the time had come to try to check and see if there is a way to live peacefully with the Palestinians. They had their own interests. After the Soviet Union collapsed, they lost the big founder and the big supporter. The Israeli-Egyptian peace accord was also quite a blow in the faces because Egypt was leading the Arab world. And suddenly, Egypt is making peace with Israel. What does it leave us? They forgot about us, they betrayed us. So the two people had a reason to try to find an agreement, and these were the reasons. Well, the Oslo Accords are very clear and very simple. We speak about land for peace. The Palestinians will have an autonomy, not a state, all right? And they only have to prove to us they mean business by fighting their own terror militia. Collect the illegal weapons from your people, start the instigation in the media. We're going to give it 5 years. We'll stop the violence. After 5 years, we have the experience, we'll sit down to the table, we'll bring it to the final conclusion. Don't even try to understand the map that you see in front of you, but that was the plan. We'll take it a step at a time. We're going to clear some areas and give it to the Palestinians. We'll start with Jericho. And then we'll pull out from the area of Jenin. And then Tulkarem, Nablus, all this will be given to the Palestinian small enclaves. And then we'll wait and see, how do you handle it? We wait and see that you can control your own territory. We'll see how you prepare your education. What are the messages in the curriculum? We want to see the textbooks. What are you educating the future generation? We want to listen to the imam in the mosque. What's the message? If it's go and butcher the Jews, we'll stop the whole thing. That's how it started. And Israel, in good faith, I have to say once again, pulled out from Jericho and pulled out from all this area, and we wanted to see what will be the response. Who wants to guess what we got in return? More terror and more shootings and more bombs, because now they had places like safe havens to go to that we were not supposed to pursue them because we respected the sovereignty. A bomb blasted in the university in Jerusalem, right here. By the time we cleared the whole issue and the whole debris over there, the two that did it went back to Jericho, found shelter here, and we said to Mr. Arafat, listen man, you're a partner. We know where these people live. Here's the address. You go and arrest them, make a commitment. The answer was, well, I don't want to start a civil war. This is not going to work. I'm not strong enough. I need some help. You know what we did? We helped them. We gave them more weapons because we made a deal. And partners supposed to keep the deal. How did they use the weapons? To fire at us. But back then we thought it still can work. It will take some time. It takes time for such a radical move to start working. We'll give it a few more months. And if that's a few more years, it wasn't working because it wasn't the plan to begin with. So we made peace with someone that had no plan whatsoever to keep that. It took us a while to understand this is not working. A few years later, let me show you. When they started, when the Palestinians got their authority officially, 1st of July 1994, Arafat came from Egypt to the territories, and he was supposed to start his reign, etc. And that was the welcome party in Gaza for Arafat. As I said, for a few years, it simply was not working until we said, well, enough is enough. Let's re-examine everything and see what can be done. I do want to run this one through because the clock is ticking. There's always the clock that's ticking. All right? And bring it not even to this one. We just don't have the time. I'm sorry. 2000, a new Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, initiating another peace talks. Barak says to Arafat in the White House, we only live 5 minutes away from one another. We want to talk, we go to America. That's how it works. So listen. I do understand, says Barak, and he was not very popular because most Israelis did not like the idea, but it was a majority. For that in the Knesset, definitely. We understand that this is not working. Here's our offer. 93% of Judea, Samaria, Gaza will be a future Palestinian state. We'll keep 7% from the West Bank. We'll compensate you with 7% from the Israeli side. You've got what we think you want. Hallelujah. And it did not even occur to us that what Arafat wants is not a Palestinian state, but the destruction of the Jewish state. This wasn't even a starter for them. Our maximum did not meet his minimum. And that was a wake-up call for us. We thought we are so generous, this could not be turned down. We can't offer more than that. That's our maximum. He did not even present a counter-offer. Left the room, went back to Ramallah, the capital in the West Bank, and next, the second Intifada started, another wave of riots, etc. I do want to stop here because the next and last session I do want to dedicate to the war in Gaza. And the way, actually, I just kind of glued together a few things, and the transition is not very smooth, so I'm apologizing already. It's going to be a session about Gaza. We won't speak about the West Bank, and some of the information you heard from me already. So I hope that you don't mind to hear some of it more than once, because I doubt how much you can remember anyhow, how much our brain can retain, so I hope that you don't mind. And that will be dedicated to the war in Gaza. And we'll speak about the hostages, etc. And the very last thing that I'd like to do, the end of the next session, is to play a song that was filmed in the theater in Caesarea, that many of you know. The families of the hostages and 1,000 Israeli musicians got together to sing a song, a very famous Hebrew one, basically says, bring them home. And this will be the slogan that you'll find in Israel today. More than any other thing, we want them back home. So we'll do that in a few minutes. If you wish to be back in about 10 minutes, we'll bring the whole seminar to conclusion. We'll be more focused about what happens in Gaza recently. Thank you. So let's meet back here at 10 past.